Hello everyone, Ark's latest Community Crunch dropped just a couple hours ago, and my goodness, do we have a lot to go through and cover. They went through and released some concept art for Aberration, and first and foremost, this thing looks absolutely beautiful. I know there was quite a few concerns with whether it be the lighting effects or the special effects, specifically in Aberration, especially after we saw what the remaster did to things like the rocks on the lava island in the center. I know there's definitely been some hesitation here, and of course this is just a picture, but if we're just going off the picture, this looks beautiful. This is a greatly done remaster. Immediately some things do pop out, but let's go through and essentially break down everything one specific part of the image at a time. So I would say first and foremost, the thing that probably caught all of our eyes is going to be the Yi Ling, or who was formerly known as the Yi Q. Now what really stands out to me here is quite a few things here on this creature. First and foremost is the drastic transformation it's actually undergone since the original concept art was released back during the creature vote. Essentially the Yi Ling, or was referred to as the Yi Q then, had its name changed because everything in Ark essentially has its name changed to not be compared to its real life variant. And the Yi Q in real life was essentially what everyone would consider the most realistic real-life version of a dragon. So I think right here, honestly, what they've done with the design since where it originally came from is great. I think it kind of really holds to that and sticks to that. It does look and have a lot of qualities of the dragon. Of course, it does have that slender, thin body like the dodo and the raptor, which we saw previously in the last Community Crunch. But overall, this thing looks really, really cool. Now, the other thing that stands out is the tail. The tail is very, very long, similar to that of what we would see with like a wyvern, for example. And so I'm really glad to have that detail there. And then another thing that stands out here is the saddle as well. There's quite a few markings and drawings here on the saddle, and I couldn't compare it or find anything specific with those markings to anything else, but it's definitely pretty unique. Now, another thing that stands out specifically in that image is the survivor. Look at the helmet they are wearing. It appears to be some sort of cosmetic skin. My guess and my assumption would be that most likely it has something to do with the actual Bob's Tall Tales pack, but it's kind of weird because one of the cosmetics I know for sure we were going to get was that top hat, which we could see in the actual thumbnail or the art for the Bob's Tall Tales. But that specific piece of armor definitely stood out to me and something to make a note of here. Now moving slightly over to the right, we can see that there is a survivor going through and using the glide suit, which is great to go through and know that the glide suit will be making a return here, and you can see that they do have the standard bow as well. Now if we were to zoom in directly behind them there, we do see a couple of Ravengers climbing upside down on the zip lines, which of course reinforces that zip lines will still in fact be a part of the game. Another great thing about Aberration. Now, if we were to shift downward to the bottom left-hand corner, we do go through and see that the Rock Drake is there, and the Rock Drake is looking as menacing and powerful as ever, and that is fantastic. And then we do see actually a new item here to Aberration, or basically an item that's coming back here with Aberration, and that would be the Tech Railgun. For those of you that are unfamiliar, the Tech Rifle shoots bullets quite fastly, and the Tech Railgun essentially is an upgraded version of the Fabricated Sniper, just its tech variant. Now moving over to the right here, honestly, this is the very first thing I saw in the entire image. The EQ is definitely cool, but seeing this bulldog trying to take this giant bite out of this nameless creature here in the very, very center of the bottom part of the picture is just freaking hilarious. I absolutely love that because bulldogs, you first see them in the game and they're just these cute little creatures walking around with these lights, but then when he opens his mouth, you can just see those razor-sharp teeth, and if he actually wanted to do a number on something, I'm sure he definitely could. And yeah, I wanted to point that because I thought that was pretty darn funny. I think that's great. And the Nameless actually looked pretty terrifying too with those glowing red eyes. You can see all of the red along its body here. Almost like it's crawling out of the cracks to try and come up onto the green area out of the red or the blue zone. So definitely pretty intimidating there. Alright, now moving directly behind the Bulldog here, we do see a Ravenger with a Survivor on it wielding a gun, or what's actually the Charged Lantern. That Charged Lantern essentially allows you to go through and do stun the Nameless and essentially kind of mitigate some of the damage that Reapers would do. And looking at the particles on this compared to what it looks like in-game in Survival Evolved is breathtakingly different. So I'm really hoping we see that same level of design when you get in the game, and hopefully it's not like super choppy, because there's quite a bit that does happen when that gun goes off, especially when you're in the blue zone or the red zone. And there's quite a few more Nameless, because it almost creates beams for each of them individually to zap them, stun them, and then send them away. But yeah, that is a really great looking design there. And you can see another Nameless actually walking up right to stalk him and attack him while he's got the other one stunned. But the gun previously was able to stun multiple creatures at once, so definitely an interesting thing there. Now, the Reaper just looks ferocious there as well. I definitely believe that's the Reaper Queen. based on the design there in the hand as well as the extra detail there on the tail. So I am fairly certain that's the queen there, and nothing really new that stands out, but the queen just looks as amazing and fresh as ever. Definitely something we're going to want to look out for and hopefully get some more information on in the future. And then you see the menacing rock whale, the big bad boss of the area, directly behind, almost as if the corruption itself is trying to reach out and try to go through and attack these survivors, or defend itself against the survivors here coming with the onslaught of all the different gear that they have. Now, it is something to make a note of here. So talking about the picture as a whole, there's quite a few specific things that stand out. You can definitely notice, like in the bottom left-hand corner where the rock drake is at, that purple or pink web-like flower is extremely detailed, like very, very detailed. And then even looking at some of the like blue flowers there on the ground directly in the back, so for example the one between the nameless and the bulldog, just a high quality amount of detail, so that definitely looks great. And then you can see the mushrooms from the green zone as well, still towering. You can see the one directly behind the rock drake, and then you actually see quite a few more in the distance here with the trees against that other wall. Now, speaking of that specific wall, you'll notice on that wall immediately, we do see what they've done with a lot of the actual concept here in Survival Evolved, where essentially they've kind of greened it, or green revised it, if you will. They've added a bunch of lush greenery to that specific rock just to add more detail, as a lot of the rocks and the different things in Survival Evolved just basically lacked any form of detail. It was just a flat rock with absolutely nothing. So it'll definitely be a big difference here. What was crazy though is Aberration was already very green. There was already a lot of color, so many different flora there with all the different plants, the mushrooms, etc. So it'll be really interesting, and hopefully they don't overdo it, because if performance already struggles on areas like the island, I can only imagine on areas like Aberration. Granted, a lot of that stuff tends to be a lot less usable. For example, like the vines hanging down tend to not be something you would use. Obviously, you have these zip lines and the vines that you can ride, but there tends to be a lot of just different plants and flora that aren't necessarily just used. They were cosmetically there. So hopefully they can enhance that without hindering the performance too much. Definitely something we'll have to keep an eye out for. Now, of course, we also know, though, speaking of performance, that they have been working on that latest version of the Unreal Engine. So hopefully with that, and as they release here in Aberration, we actually see an increase in performance and not a downgrade here. And if we do, I am certain that we will actually see our player base go through and go up, because I honestly think a lot of players have been waiting for Aberration. I definitely see the player base actually increasing and growing as long as these land right. If these can come through and they can successfully launch these and stick pretty true to that deadline there and actually launch with an optimization with the new Unreal Engine, I definitely think not only will we see an increase in player base, which I think is just in general, but hopefully some more positivity around it. But I don't want to hold my breath, as, you know, there has been some things that certainly do leave us with question and doubt, so only time will tell for sure. But this image definitely has me excited for what is possible. Again, hopefully they can stick through it. Now, there is a couple of things, though, that I did notice here that's actually absent. And in the text, it specifically calls out the Cosmo, and yet the Cosmo, as far as I can tell, is actually nowhere here in this concept art whatsoever. Granted, I know that it's not specific and it doesn't actually include the steampunk DLC, as this is probably just the vanilla art, but I do think it's kind of odd that they specifically called it out in the text and then they don't actually show it here in the image. And the same thing can actually be said for the blimp as well. I don't even see the blimp there in the background, so that's definitely interesting. They maybe are just keeping the two separate because they don't want to advertise potentially Aberration with that, even though it's an additional add-on to buy that. So that could be a reason why as to why did they not include either one of those things. But I just thought it was kind of odd that it was thrown up there in the text and not in the actual image itself. Alright, well that's pretty much my recap here of the different image and the information that was shared with us. Please let me know down in the comments if you think I missed anything, and let me know what your thoughts are. The most intriguing thing to me, for sure, though, was that saddle on the Yi Ling. It definitely looks pretty darn cool, and it's making me curious what all those different markings actually mean. And lastly here, if you did find the video insightful in any way whatsoever, or you just simply enjoyed the content, then please consider leaving a like and subscribing if you're not already.